Hello, everybody, and boys and girls. Welcome back to my channel. Today, we are reading some more of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you do, comment down below if you guys have enjoyed about this mysterious magical world, and be sure to stay and Chapter 4: The Keeper of the Keys. Boom! They knocked again. Dudley jerked awake. "Where's the cannon?" he said stupidly. There was a crash behind them, and Uncle Vernon came sliding into the room. He was holding a rifle in his hand. Now they knew what had been in the long, thin package he had brought with them. "Who's there?" he shouted. "I warn you, I'm armed." There was a pause. Then, smash! The door was sealed with such force that it swung clean off its hinges and with a deafening crash landed flat on the floor. A giant of a man was standing in the doorway. His face was almost completely hidden by a long shady mane of hair, and almost completely and a wild tangled beard where you could make out his eyes, glinting like black beetles under all the hair. The giant squeezed his way into the hut, stooping so that his head just brushed the ceiling. He bent down, picked up the door, and fitted it easily back into its frame. The noise of the storm outside had dropped a little. He turned to look at them all. "Couldn't make us a cup of tea, could ya? It's not been an easy journey." He strode over to the sofa where Dudley sat frozen with fear. "Budge up, ya great lump," said the stranger. Dudley squeaked and ran to hide behind his mother, who was crouching, terrified, behind Uncle Vernon. "And here's Harry," said the giant. Harry looked up into the fierce, wild, shadowy face and saw that the beetle eyes were wrinkled in a smile. "Last time I saw you was only a baby," said the giant. "Yeah, you look a lot like your dad, but you got your mom's eyes." Uncle Vernon made this funny rasping noise. "I demand that you leave at once, sir," he said. "You are breaking and entering." "Ah, shut up, Dursley, ya great prune," said the giant. He reached over the back of the sofa, jerked the gun out of Uncle Vernon's hand, bent it into a knot as easily as if it had been made of rubber, and threw it into a corner of the room. Uncle Vernon made another funny noise like a mouse being trodden on. "Anyway, Harry," said the giant, turning his back on Dursley's, "a very happy birthday to ya. Got summat for ya here. I might have sat on it at some point, but it'll taste alright." From an inside pocket of his black overcoat, he pulled a slightly squashed box. Harry opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a large, sticky chocolate cake with a "Happy Birthday, Harry" written on it in green icing. Harry looked up at the giant. He meant to say thank you, but the words got lost on the way to his mouth. And what he said instead, "Who are you?" The giant chuckled. "True, I haven't introduced myself. Rubus Hagrid, keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts." He held out an enormous hand and shook Harry's whole arm. "What about that tea then, eh?" he said, rubbing his hands together. I'll say no to so much stronger if you got it, mind." His eyes fell on the empty grate with the shriveled crisp packets in it, and he snorted. He bent down over the fireplace. They couldn't see what he was doing, but when he drew back, a second later, there was a roaring fire there. It filled the whole damp hut with flickering light, and Harry felt the warmth wash over him, as though he sunk into a hot bath. The giant sat back down on the sofa, which sagged under his weight, and began taking all sorts of things out of the pocket of his coat: a copper kettle, a squashy package of sausages, a poker, a teapot, several chipped mugs, and a bottle of some amber liquid. which he took a swig from before, which he took a swig from before starting to make tea. Soon the hut was full of the sound and smell of sizzling sausage. Nobody said a thing while the giant was working, but as he slid the fat, six fat, juicy, slightly burnt sausages from the poker, Dudley fidgeted a little. Uncle Vernon said sharply, "Don't touch anything he gives you, Dudley." The giant chuckled darkly. "Yeah, great pudding of a son, don't need fatting any more, does he? Don't worry." He passed the sausages to Harry. He was so hungry he never tasted anything so wonderful, but he still couldn't take his eyes off the giant. Finally, as nobody seemed to explain anything, he said, "I'm sorry, but I still don't really know who you are." The giant took a gulp of tea and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Call me Hagrid," he said. "Everyone does. And like I told you, I'm keeper of keys at Hogwarts. You'll know all about Hogwarts, of course." No," said Harry. Harry looked shocked. "Sorry," Harry said quickly. "Sorry?" barked Hagrid, turning to stare at the Dursley, who shrank back into the shadows. "It's them I should be sorry. I knew you weren't getting your letters because I never thought you would even know about Hogwarts, for crying out loud. Did you never wonder where your parents learned it all?" "Or what?" asked Harry. "Oh, what?" Hagrid thundered. "Now wait just 1 second." He had leaped to his feet. In his anger, he seemed to fill the whole hut. The Dursleys were cowering against the wall. "Do you mean to tell me," he growled at Dursley, "that this boy knows nothing about anything?" Harry thought this was going to be a bit far. He had been to the school after all, and his marks weren't bad. "I know some things. I can, do maths and stuff." But Hagrid simply waved his hand and said, "About our world, I mean. Your world, my world, your parents' world." "What world?" Harry looked as if he was about to explode. "Dursley!" he boomed. Uncle Vernon, who had gone very pale, whispered something that sounded like "Mimble, Wimble." Hagrid stared wildly at Harry. "But you must know about your mum and dad," he said. "I mean, they're famous. You're famous." "What? My mum and dad weren't famous, were they?" You don't know. You don't know." Hagrid ran his fingers through his hair, fixing Harry with a bewild stare. "You don't know what you are?" he said, Hagrid finally. Uncle Vernon suddenly found his voice. "Stop!" he commanded. "Stop right there, sir. I forbid you to tell the boy anything." A braver man than Vernon Dursley would have qualified under the furious look Hagrid now gave him. When Hagrid spoke, every syllable trembled with rage. "You never told him what was inside the letter in the Dumbledore left for him." "I was there. I saw Dumbledore leave it, Dursley, and you kept it from him all these years." "Kept what from me?" said Harry eagerly. "Stop! I forbid you!" yelled Uncle Vernon in panic. Aunt Petunia gave a gasp of horror. Go bow your heads, both of you," said Hagrid. "Harry, you're a wizard." There was silence in the hut. Only the sea and the whistling wind could be heard. "I'm a what?" gasped Harry. "A wizard, of course," said Hagrid, sitting back down on the sofa, which groaned and sank even lower. "And an thumping good un, I'd say. Once you've been trained up a bit. With a mum and dad like yours, what else would you be? And I reckon it's about time you read your letter." Harry stretched out his hand at last to take the yellowish envelope, addressed in emerald green to Mr. H. Potter, the floor, hut on the rock, the sea. He pulled out the letter and read, "Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster Albus Dumbledore. Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Sork. Chief Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confed of Wizards. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform that you have had a place at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on 1st of September, where we await your hour by no later than 31st of July. The sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress. Questions exploded inside Harry's head like fireworks, and he couldn't decide which to ask first. After a few minutes, he stammered, "What does it mean, they await my hour?" "Galloping Gorgons, that reminds me," said Harry, clapping a hand to his forehead. With enough force to knock over a cart horse, and yet another pocket inside his overwatch, he pulled an owl. A real live, rather rough-looking owl. A long quill and a roll of parchment. With his tongue between his teeth, he scribbled a note, which Harry could read upside down. "Dear Mr. Dumbledore, given Harry his letter, taking him to buy his things tomorrow. Weather's horrible. Hope you're well, Hagrid." Hagrid rolled up the note, gave it to the owl, which clamoured it in its beak, went to the door, and threw the owl out into the storm. Gonna have some cup of water. And by the way, guys, if you enjoy this series, then consider commenting down below if you guys want more books about Harry Potter. For example, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry Potter and the Order of Phoenix, any of those books, like every book I will read from Harry Potter until I came up to Deathly Hallows. But if there are more books that I don't know, then please do comment down below, because that'll be really, really helpful. Thank you. Then he came back and sat down as though this was as normal as talking on the telephone. Harry realized his mouth was open and closed it quickly. "Where was I?" said Hagrid. But at that moment, Uncle Vernon, was still ashen-faced, but looked very angry, moved into the firelight. "He is not going," he said. Hagrid grunted. "So, I would like to see a great muggle like you stop him," he said. "A what?" said Harry, interested. "A muggle," said Hagrid. "It's what we call non-magic folk like them. And to your bad luck you grew up in a family of the biggest muggles I've ever laid eyes on. We swore when we took him and we put a stop to that rubbish," said Uncle Vernon. "Swore we stamp it out of him. Wizard indeed." "You knew," said Harry. "You knew I'm a wizard." "Knew?" shrieked Aunt Petunia suddenly. "Knew? Of course we knew. How could you not be my greatest sister, being of what she was? Oh, she got a letter just like that and disappeared after that school, and came home every holiday with her pockets full of frog spawn, turning teacups into rats. I was the only one who saw her for what she was, a freak. Before my mother and father, oh no, it was Lily this and Lily that. They were proud of having a witch in the family." She stopped to draw a deep breath and then went ranting on. It seemed she had been waiting to say this all these years. "Then she met that Potter at my school, and they left and got married and had you. And of course, I knew you'd be just the same, just as strange, just as abnormal. And then, if you please, she went and got herself blown up, and we got landed with you." Harry had gone very white. As soon as he found his voice, he said, "Blown up? You told me they died in the car crash." "Car crash!" roared Hagrid, jumping up so angry that the Dursleys stuttered back to their corner. "How could a car crash kill Lily and James Potter? It's an outrage, a scandal. Harry Potter not knowing his own story when every kid in our world knows his name. But why? What happened? Harry said urgently. The anger faded from Hagrid's face. He looked suddenly anxious. I never expected this, he said in a low, worried voice. I had no idea. When Dumbledore told me there might be trouble getting hold of you, how much you didn't know. Harry, I don't know if I'm in the right person to tell you, but someone's gotta. You can't go off to Hogwarts not knowing. He threw a dirty look at the Dursleys. Well, it's best you know as much as I can tell you. Mind, I can't tell you everything. It's a great mystery, part of it. He sat down, stared into the fire for a few seconds, and then said, It begins, I suppose, with a person called. Well, it's incredible you don't know his name. Everyone in our world knows who. Well, I don't like to say his name if I can help it. No one does. Why not? Gulping gargoyles, Harry. People are still scared. Believe me, this is difficult. See, there was this wizard who went bad. As bad as you could go. Worse. Worse than worse. His name was Harry gulped, but no words came out. Can you write it down? Harry suggested. Nah, can't spell it. Alright. Voldemort. Hagrid shuddered. Don't make me say it again. Anyway, this wizard, about 20 years ago now, started looking for followers. Got 'em too. Some were afraid, some were just a bit of his power. Because he was getting himself power, right? Dark days, Harry. Didn't know who to trust. Didn't dare get friendly with strange wizards and witches. Terrible things happened. He was taking over. Of course, someone stood up to him, and he killed them. Horribly. One of the safest places left was Hogwarts. Reckon Dumbledore's the only one you know who was afraid of. Didn't dare try to take in the school. Not just then, anyway. Now your mum and dad were as good a witch and wizard as I ever knew. Head boy and girl at Hogwarts in their day. Suppose the mystery is why you know who you never tried to get them on his side before. Probably knew they were too close to Dumbledore to want anything to do with the dark side. Maybe he thought he could persuade them. Maybe he just wanted them out of the way. All anyone knows is he turned up in the village where you all was living on Halloween 10 years ago. You know, you was just 1 year old. You were just a year old. He came to your house and Hagrid suddenly pulled out a very dirty spotted handkerchief and blew his nose with a sound like a foghorn. Sorry, he said, but it's that sad. Knew your mom and dad and nicer people you couldn't find. Anyway, you know who killed them. And then, and this real mystery of the thing, he tried to kill you too. Wanted to make a clean job of it, I suppose, or maybe he just liked killing by then, but he couldn't do it. Never wondered how you got that mark on your forehead. That was no ordinary cut. That's what you get when a powerful evil reverse curse touches you. Took care of you, your mom and dad, and your house. Even it didn't work on you, and that's why you're famous, Harry. No one ever lived after decided to kill them. No one except you. And he killed some of the best witches and wizards of the age. The Mick, the McKinners, the McKinnons, the Bones, the Pruitts, and you was only a baby, and you lived. Something very painful was going on in Harry's mind. As Hagrid's story came to a close, he saw the blinding flash of green light more clearly than he had ever remembered it before, and he remembered something else for the first time in his life. A high, cold, cruel laugh. Hagrid was watching him sadly. Take care from the ruined house myself, on Dumbledore's orders. Brought you to this load of old trosh, said Uncle Vernon. Harry jumped. He had almost forgotten that the Dursleys were there. Uncle Vernon certainly seemed to have got a back on his courage. He was glaring at Hagrid, and his fists were clenched. Now, you listen here, boy, he snarled. I expect there's something strange about you. Probably nothing a good beating would have heard. And as for all this about your parents, well, they were weirdos, no denying it. And for all they got getting mixed up with these wizarding types, just what I expected. Always knew they'd come to a sticky end, but at that moment, Hagrid leapt from the sofa and drew a battered pink umbrella from inside his coat. Pointing this at Uncle Vernon like a sword, he said, I'm warning you, Dursley. I'm warning you. One more word. In danger of being stared on the end of an umbrella by a big giant, Uncle Vernon's courage failed again. He flattened himself against the wall and fell silent. That's better, said Hagrid, breathing heavily and sitting back on the sofa. With this sign sagged right down to the floor. Harry, meanwhile, still had questions to ask, hundreds of them. But what happened to Sorry, I mean, you know who. Good question, Harry. Disappeared. Vanished. Same night he tried to kill you. But yeah, even more famous. That's the biggest mystery, see? He was getting more and more powerful. Why'd he go? Some say he died. Codswallop, in my opinion, don't know if he had any human left in him to die. Some say he's still out there biding his time, but I don't believe it. People who was on his side came back to ours. Some of them, some of them came out of their kind of chances. Don't reckon they could have done it if he was coming back. Most of us reckon he's still out there somewhere, but lost his powers. Too weak to carry on. There's something about you, Harry. There's something about you finished him, Harry. There was something going on that night he hadn't counted on. I don't know what it was. No one does. But something about you stumped him, alright? Hagrid looked at Harry with warmth and respect blazing in his eyes. But Harry, instead of feeling pleased and proud, felt quite sure there had been a horrible mistake. A, a wizard? Him? How could he possibly be? He spent his life being quoted by Dudley and bullied by Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon. If he really was a wizard, why hadn't they turned into watery toads every time they tried to lock him in the cupboard? If he once defeated the greatest sorcerer in the world, how come Dudley had always been able to kick him around like a football? Just a sec. Hagrid, he said quietly, I think you must have made a mistake. I don't think I can be a wizard. To his surprise, Hagrid chuckled. Not a wizard, eh? Never made things happen when you were scared or angry? Harry looked into the fire. Now he has come about to think about it. Every odd thing that had made his aunt and uncle furious had with him had happened when he, Harry, had been upset or angry. Chased by Dudley's gang, he had somehow found himself out of their reach. Dreading going to school with that ridiculous haircut, he managed to grow it back. And the very last time Dudley had hit him, hadn't he got his revenge without even realizing what he was doing? Hadn't he set a boa constrictor on him? Harry looked back at Hagrid, smiling, and saw that Harry was possibly beaming at him. You see, said Hagrid, Harry Potter, not a wizard. You wait, you'll be right famous at Hogwarts. But Uncle Vernon wasn't going to give it in without a fight. Haven't I told you he's not going to, he hissed. He's going to Stonewall High, and he'll be grateful for it. I've read those letters, and he needs all sorts of rubbish. Spell books and wands and If he wants to go, a great muggle like you won't stop him, growled Hagrid. Stop Lily and James' son going to Hogwarts. You're mad. His name's been down ever since he was born. He's off to the finest school of witchcraft and wizardry in the world. 7 years there, and he won't know himself. He'll be the youngest of his own sort. For a change, and he'll be under the greatest headmaster Hogwarts ever had, Albus Dumbledore. I am not paying for some crackpot old fool to teach you magic tricks, yelled Uncle Vernon. But he had finally gone too far. Hagrid seized his umbrella and whirled it over his head. Never, he thundered, insult Albus Dumbledore in front of me. He brought the umbrella swooshing down through the air to point at Dudley. There was a flash of violent light, a sound like a firecracker, a sharp squeal, and next second, Dudley was dancing uh, on the spot. Sorry, just a sec. Dudley was dancing on the spot with his hands clasped over his far bottom, howling in pain. And when he turned his back on them, Harry saw a curly pig's tail poking through a hole in his trousers. Uncle Vernon roared, pulling Aunt Petunia and Dudley into the under room. He cast one last terrified look at Hagrid and slammed the door behind him. Hagrid looked down at his umbrella and stroked his beard. "Should have lost me a temper," he said ruefully. "But it didn't work anyway. Meant to turn him into a pig, but I suppose he was much of a like a pig anyway. There wasn't much left to do." He cast a sideways look at Harry under his bushy eyebrows. "Be greater if you didn't mention that to anyone at Hogwarts," he said. "I'm not supposed to do magic, strictly speaking. I was allowed to do a bit follow you and get your letters to and stuff. And one of the reasons I was so keen to take on the job. Why aren't you supposed to do magic?" asked Harry. "Oh well, I was at Hogwarts myself, but I got expelled, to tell you the truth, in my third year. They snapped my wand in half and everything. But Dumbledore let me stay as a gamekeeper." "Great man, Dumbledore. Why were you expelled?" "It's getting late, and we've got lots of to do tomorrow," he said Hagrid loudly. "Gotta get up of town, got your old books and that." He took off his thick black coat, threw it to Harry. Threw it to Harry. "You can keep under that," he said. "Don't mind if it wriggles a bit. I still got a couple of diamonds in one of the pockets." And that it's the end of chapter 4. If you guys have enjoyed the video, then consider subscribing. It's free and it would be really appreciated if you did, because you will be joining the community of world reading. I'll see you guys on the next video of another chapter of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. See you on the next